Okay, here we go. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the Nefesh podcast. And I am so excited to have a friend of mine, Sara Whitehurst, on this episode talking about her own journey in ministry. She's a missionary to Thailand, and I'm really excited that she's going to be giving me an update, giving maybe others an update of what it's been like. You were there over in the pandemic, and so that would have been a whole other experience. But I'm really excited for you to be here and for you to share your story. So welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So now we've known each other for a few years. You were taking some classes with the Southern California School of Ministry with the Assemblies of God. And one of the first things that I remember about you in just kind of the initial meetings was just how passionate, how hungry you were for more of studying the Bible, more of knowing God's word, and your heart for ministry just came across so powerfully. And it's been exciting to be on this journey with you and see, all the, not exciting to see the struggles, but, it kind of seeing how you've managed to navigate it and how God has provided over these last few years. But why don't you begin just by telling us a little bit about yourself? I know you're from the Bakersfield area, right? In California?
Well, I'm originally from Tucson, but I grew up
right.
in Bakersfield.
Okay.
Technically, yeah. But I'm the oldest of 6. I have 16 nieces and nephews.
Wow.
I'm happily single unless the Lord wants to change that, which I would be happy for him to do so. But unless or until that happens, my life, I can just spend my time, money, efforts in serving the Lord. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So your calling to ministry, I mean, I know originally you felt a passion, I don't know if you probably still do a bit, to Africa, wasn't it? And you initially did ministry there, and then it kind of switched on you. Take us through that process, that journey. When did you feel like you were called to vocational missions or vocational ministry?
It was quite the process. It was about a 10-year process. I'm a slow learner, apparently, but I was the kid that I couldn't be away from my mom or my sister. I had to have one of them with me to do anything. And when I was 21, I went on my first mission trip. It was to the Philippines. It was a 2-week trip, but it just changed my life forever. That led to several more short-term trips. And then in 2006, at 26 years old, was the first time I did something without my mom or my sister or a best friend. And I went to Swaziland. It's called Eswatini now in Southern Africa. And that was where the Lord called me to be. Like, I knew I was going to be a missionary. Like, before that, I knew, like, I would do short-term trips, here and there, but that's when he called me to be a missionary.
And so during those short-term trips, was there something kind of stirring in you? So you felt really the confirmed call at 26, but prior to that, were there, on all these trips, were you just kind of going, maybe not sure what was going on, but what was taking place inside you?
Well, my first trip to the Philippines, we went to an island called Payatas, and there is like a dump there where people live.
Wow.
And I couldn't unsee that. I couldn't disconnect from that and come back to America and not, think about that. It changed my life forever. And it started me thinking of, like, okay, how can I do something about these people that are living just in a poverty that I just had no idea even existed in this world, and I'd gone to Mexico a few times. But yeah, it was just like, there's a need that I didn't know existed. and I was trying to figure out how to meet that need.
And especially in country, well, those of us who are kind of from the Southern California area may have had opportunities to go across the border into Mexico. It is a completely different, it is different. I mean, it's night and day from one side of the border to the other. And you see similar in Mexico. I remember couple of mission trip down there being gripped by a similar thing. Like, these people are living in abject squalor, in dump or trash heaps, and the need is almost overwhelming. I know that at least that's what it felt like for me. Like, how in the world do we help these people? So for you, it's kind of maybe the eyes opening to what other people are experiencing around the world. So, I just picture you almost like being on missions trip after missions trip in that first part of your life. Was it kind of like that? Like, it just continued, like this passion, this desire to minister to people? Was it just growing inside you?
Yes, but at that time, it was very much from an American standpoint. Like, these people need clothes and shoes, so I have to give that to them. Or they need blankets, I need to give that to them. Rather than what's causing them to not be able to afford these things.
Right.
And looking at the deeper issue. Do they need education so that they can break cycles of poverty? Or, like, just reassessing the need, or looking a little bit deeper at the need. At that time, it was very much just these physical needs have physical solutions, and how do I, like, when we went to Mexico, we bring blankets and clothes and things like that.
And it's really, there is a movement today that is really beginning to understand that and dive deeper into that, and which I really appreciate, because it's not that you or others or we're saying that stuff isn't needed, but that has been like you said, the American response, kind of a quick initial, let me just give them blankets, and then the next year I'll come and bring them back another blanket, instead of helping them to make their own blanket or find ways out of that. And I think there's one movement called the poverty cure that I years ago was introduced to. And so things like that, which really delve deeper into the whole person and how we can help them rather than just in that moment give them something.
And I also learned later, when I was with Convoy of Hope, that if we take hundreds of t-shirts to different countries, what does that do for the textile industry there?
Yes.
Rather than how do we maybe buy from what's already available in country, and then like, that just helps more all around.
That's so good. Yeah. So then at 26, you're in South Africa, and you felt like that was what God called you to do. How did you, was it a response where you felt like, okay, I get this, I know what I need to do, here we go? Or was it, were there any like emotions and the fear, anxiety involved with all that?
It was a lot. Well, he's never done this before or since, but while I was there, I just felt prompted to read Isaiah 55:5, and I should have it memorized. But in that scripture, it talks about, you'll go to nations that you don't know.
Wow.
And I was like, that's pretty clear. But I was still like, oh, I'll just be doing more short-term trips. Like, I knew, like, it was always going to be part of my life after that. I didn't know what it would look like.
Right.
About a year later, I became a school bus driver. And I was like, oh, I'll work during the school year, do trips in the summer. Sure. I've got it figured out, and then after one school year, the California Bakersfield extended the walking distance. So they laid off like 20 or 30 drivers.
Wow.
And I was like, so that wasn't the plan. It's like, man, Lord, I thought I had this figured out, but that wasn't it at all.
Well, and for somebody, you described yourself at the beginning as, you always went somewhere with your mom or your sister, you're super close to them. And so to be stretched to out of that comfort zone to now, I mean, I remember a few years ago, you were itching to get back. You could not
Yeah.
wait to get back. It was like you were doing everything that you could to get everything you needed to go back. That's a shift, right? From even just your comfort zone. But it sounds like it became, again, just a passion and a desire that superseded everything else.
Oh, absolutely. This is not, I thought God created me to be a mother and a wife by the time I was 25, and I'm about to be 43. So this calling that he's put on my life, like, I can't ignore it.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't lay that aside just like to pursue the things that I thought I wanted,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So take us from that moment in, at 26 in Swaziland. Take us through that journey and the process of what that looked like from there. What were the steps? What did you do next?
Well, just like the Lord knew his calling for me and I knew it, Satan figured it out too at that same time. And after that trip, I had moved in with some friends from church and started drinking with my church friends, because if it's with your church friends, it's not bad, right?
Right, of course.
But that led to about 2 or 3 years of just living a life that didn't honor the Lord. And I was doing things that the world promises, this will make you happy. This will give you freedom. And it's like the more I did it, the more I hated myself. I'm like, this is not making me happy. Like, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I need to do more of it. So I spent 2 or 3 years just not living for the Lord.
Wow.
And that got to where one night I had been drinking a lot and I was laying in bed and I was like, I don't want to live anymore. But even in that state of mind, I knew that God could thwart my efforts. Like, I still revered his sovereignty. And I was like, okay, God, just don't let me wake up unless you can use me.
Wow.
And when I woke up the next morning, I knew grace, like, for the first time. Like, I fully understood it.
Wow.
And from that time on, I was like, okay, God, whatever you want me to do, like, I'll do that.
Wow.
And about a year later is when I went to Kenya with Convoy of Hope. And then a year after that, I started full-time missions.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a challenging experience, and yet what a miraculous encounter with God, and the idea that the night before you're ready to end it all, and yet are still holding on to something, still holding on to God in some way. And the very next morning, everything has changed. Your outlook has changed. That feeling of grace. How has that same feeling helped you through all of these years and the challenges? Has that been present, like that, the reminder of that moment?
Yeah. I always like to joke, but mostly serious, that my natural gifting is sarcasm and being socially awkward. But my mom raised me from before I could even read. I had Colossians 3:20 memorized.
Wow.
Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well pleasing unto the Lord. So from a very young age, I was trained to be obedient. And that's what I have. Like, that's all that I have to give back to the Lord, is my obedience. And like I said, it took several years, about a decade, for me to realize, like, oh, this is my calling, is to be a missionary.
Wow.
And I can't not obey the Lord. I'm not always perfect at it, but there's just something in me that I can't walk away from what he's calling me to do. Yeah. So I first went as an intern. They had a fall, it was like a 3-month internship.
Okay.
And then I went back the following summer to help lead their summer internship program.
Okay.
And ended up moving to Springfield.
Okay. So how did that shift? Now, was there a passion for Africa initially?
Oh, yeah. When I got to Swaziland and especially Kenya, I just immediately felt at home. Like, I don't know why or what it was,
Mm.
but yeah, it just immediately felt like home. Um, so I thought, okay, yeah, I'm coming back to Kenya, you know, but that's not what the Lord had in mind.
So what took you from there to where you are now? How did you end up in Thailand?
So the fall of 2012, uh, we went to Thailand with Convoy of Hope.
Okay.
And when we got there, we walk out of the airport and nobody's rushing to sell us anything. There's McDonald's, Starbucks, malls, restaurants, air conditioning. And I
My
was like,
my
God,
kind of place.
I really got angry with the Lord. Yeah. I was like, no, I was like, why are we here?
Mm.
Like, I don't want to be here.
Mm.
And in my wisdom, I started reminding the Lord, like, what about those widows in Tanzania? You know,
Wow.
what about those kids that were rescued out of sex trafficking in the Philippines? What
Mm.
about these people I met that don't have electricity or running water? Like, what are we doing here in Thailand? And not that Thailand doesn't have poverty, but where I was at the time, there wasn't.
Well, and so
And
you were used to dealing in situations with poverty, impoverished
yes,
people, the Philippines, Mexico, and then there in
like
Africa, you were
Haiti,
going
Honduras, yeah.
third world countries where you were,
Hmm.
and especially with Convoy of Hope, going there and providing for their essential needs. I love that they're partnering with people, local businesses. That's
Right.
awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and then you go to Thailand and it's not, I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
built up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really frustrated.
Mhm.
And then God graciously showed me the spiritual poverty that I was overlooking because of the lack of physical poverty. And he's like, all those people that you met, because we partnered with the local church, he goes, those people know me or they have access to me. But these
Mm.
people, they don't know me. And that's when
Yeah,
I realized that, you can be hungry and know Jesus as the bread of life. You can be
absolutely.
thirsty and know Jesus as living water. But if you have clothes and food and shelter, but you don't know Jesus, you're impoverished and in desperate need. And it just totally shifted my heart. And
Mm.
88% of Thailand has never heard the gospel.
Wow. How is that possible? It's so developed. I mean, so many, it's a huge tourist place, and yet 88%. How many people live there?
I want to say it's about like 70 million around that. Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
crazy. And
And Christianity was brought into Thailand uh going on 200 years ago.
so Christianity has only been there for the last 200 years that we know of.
Yeah. I think it's like
Wow.
190 years, something. It's going on 200, yeah.
Wow.
And the king at that time, he he said, what you do is good, what you believe is foolish. And he
About
essentially
Christianity.
challenged, yeah, he essentially challenged the Lord and like, go ahead, bring your God, bring your Christianity. And to this day there's 95% Buddhist.
I know that this is true, and I'm sure you you can add a lot of context to this, but I know that it has been a challenge in some Asian countries to bring Christianity in. Like in China, it was difficult for a long time because China is a very hierarchical
Mhm.
culture where if the elites are Christian, then it would filter down to the masses. But because Christianity is such a grassroots kind of, everybody is, and even especially Pentecostalism, everybody is invited to be a part, and it starts at
Mhm.
really the ground floor, that it can have trouble filtering up, and then people can have trouble accepting it if their elites, the people in government or high office, don't accept it. I don't know if the same is true in Thailand, but it is such a wealthy country, right? I mean, it's and so
Some people are
advanced.
wealthy.
So you've got like a 1% and a 99% type of thing there, where you've got, or do you have a middle class?
From what I understand, there's not much of a middle class.
Okay.
But yeah, I can't speak to other Asian countries, but for Thailand, to be Thai is to be Buddhist.
Right.
And so Buddhism is very intertwined into the culture. And so it's
Mm,
like, if I'm a Christian, what does that mean as a Thai person?
yeah.
Like, and statistically, it takes 7 years for a Buddhist to fully convert to Christianity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I
how
mean, the
long?
Lord can make it faster than that,
Sure,
but
sure. So that's a long time. So how long
yeah.
have you been there at this point?
Well, my first time there was in 2012, but I've been a missionary to Thailand for the last 7, almost 8 years now.
And has it taken this long to see any type of fruit? And I mean that in a very open way, as far as, because fruit can mean anything, any movement towards Christ. It doesn't necessarily result in conversion after conversion, but has it taken that long in your relationships there to build relationships, to see movement towards Christ?
Yeah, it's very slow.
Mm,
Especially, as a foreigner, tourists make it hard to build genuine relationship with the locals,
right.
because you automatically are certain kind of ways, so you have to live out how you're different.
Mm,
And that just takes time, it
right.
takes a lot of time.
Right.
But we are starting to see fruit. The community center where I work has been there, I want to say 11 years.
Wow.
And we've got a good, you know, 10 believers or so.
Wow. I mean, that's awesome.
Mhm.
And the sowing of
Yeah.
11 years of ministry, it really does give you credibility, right, in your
Mhm.
relationships with the people there. And then to see people, even though that growth is so slow,
Mhm.
movement is happening.
I just couldn't ignore the burden for the
Mm.
people of Thailand that the Lord was just putting in my heart.
What did you see? What was stirring in you? What was he allowing you to see?
Um, Buddhism is evil.
Mm.
It's not as peaceful as Westerners believe that it is, or want to believe that it is.
Mm.
There's a lot of demonic worship, demonic
Mm.
possession, um, and and even as far as like karma and merit making, it's a burden on the people to atone for their own wrongs,
Right.
but they never know, like, did I pray enough? Did I burn enough incense? Did I give enough
Wow.
to the temple? Like, you never know if it's enough,
Wow.
and essentially Buddhists, their ultimate goal is to become nothing.
Right.
And it just, that you can't have peace of mind,
Mm-mm.
when you have to figure out how to fix what is broken in yourself. Only Jesus can do that. And the more, like, I'll visit temples just to um remember why I'm there, because sometimes it
Mm.
gets easy, like, oh, these people, like, life's fine, so I'll go to a temple at least once a month to remember, like, okay, yeah, this is why I'm here. Like, I can't let my guard down. I can't um back down from what I'm doing. I can't just take it easy.
That that
But
description just
yeah.
gives me this image of people just in such a state of spiritual depression, like just weighed down with this, as you
Yes.
described it. They never know if what they're doing is enough. Did I,
Hmm.
building up their karma, their good karma, to get out of the
Hmm.
reincarnation cycle? Did I do
Right.
enough this time? Did I counteract today what I
Right.
did bad yesterday? Did I do enough
Hmm.
to counteract that? I can't imagine. I would go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, like, any kind of emotion is considered suffering, like hope,
Mm,
love, those are considered suffering, and you want to rid yourself of all suffering,
right,
and how do you not love? I know we're created in the image of God, and He has all of these emotions, like,
right,
they aren't wrong. And
right.
so to try to rid yourself of the very image of God, it just, is not good, and
No.
a lot of people are drugs, alcohol, there's ways they're trying to numb this,
Mm.
but only Jesus can alleviate that.
So they're in such emotional pain that even there, while they're trying to do all these good things, they're using other things, stimulants and other addictive things to try to numb the pain. That Buddhist idea of that suffering is brings on karma. It's really about, or rather, sorry, that emotions are part of suffering, and you want to rid yourself of suffering. It's with this idea that this world, Buddhists believe that this world, we should not attach ourselves to this world or to the people of this world, that it's constantly in flux, it's really not real. Think the Matrix. And that if we become too attached emotionally, whether negatively or positively, we become attached to this world. And the more attached we are to this world, the more we can't disconnect. And the goal of nirvana means to extinguish. And so the goal of that nirvana and getting out of that cycle is to extinguish all desires. And I don't think that is what Westerners, I think you're right, Westerners, and especially Americans, don't understand that the goal of Buddhism is that nothingness, is the extinguish of all desire. And any desire that keeps me, a love, care, compassion, keeps me tethered to this. I mean, I can't, again, how does it feel when you're over there? Do you feel that heaviness? Do you feel that, I don't know, another way to say it other than depression? Do you feel it? Is it that thick over there?
Oh yes, very, very much. And I don't know if, like, because I've been there for so long, I can feel it more now that I'm better understanding. Um, but it's heavy. It's
Yeah.
really heavy. Um, my first term there, I want to say it was maybe the third month. I was so spiritually attacked. I was like, I'm done. I'm out of here.
Wow.
And I was just crying my face on the floor, like, God, I don't know. Like, I was being like, Satan was just coming at me hard.
Mm,
And God was like, just let me be enough for you.
mm,
And I turned everything off for about 3 days and just really pressed into the Lord. Like, he had to be enough for me, and he's what gets me through each day. A few years ago, a friend of mine brought a team to Thailand, and I took them to a temple. And just a couple of days before we went there, somebody at the temple had won the lottery. So everybody was flooding to this temple to try to win the lot. Like, the lottery's the way out. It's not,
wow.
like, let me get an education or let me work hard, or you got to win the lottery. But
Wow.
I could, seeing their desperation, their prayers, like, I started crying. And you don't really cry in public in Thailand, like, you don't show emotion. So that happens. Like, I pass by that temple every day on my way to work. And that's just one temple. So yeah, it's very, very heavy, very heavy.
Wow. So several years ago, when you were home here in the States, you were itinerating, and it was taking longer to get back to Thailand. So you
Mhm.
eventually, you said took you a couple of months to really just feel the burden for that place. You were there, and then you came home to become apply for, like, was it full missionary status? Is that
Yeah, career
okay?
career
Okay,
missionary.
career. So
Mhm.
what was that journey like for those? How long were you here before you went back? Was it a year or 2 years?
Well, I did a 2-year term as an MA, and then I came back, and it was 2 years and 4 months. Um,
3 days and 5 hours.
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it was almost 2.5 years, and it was just about a year and a half longer than I anticipated.
Wow.
There was a couple of things. I didn't know how much was involved in going from MA to career.
Sure.
And then at that time, I had to help take care of my grandparents, and we
That's
moved
right.
my grandma into a home. And um, there was just a lot going on in
Sure.
my family. Um, so yeah, it was tough, but it's like the providence of God was still evident.
Yes. Right. Right. So you went back right before the pandemic.
Yes.
Right? I think it was 2019. What was that like, being there in the midst of the pandemic? How did how was it there during the pandemic? Was it the same there as it was, hearing what was going on here in the United States, or what was that like for you to be there at that time?
Well, I got there September of 2019, so
Okay.
just a few months
Okay.
before it all
Right.
happened. But the response to COVID there was very different than the response here. Some of that was because I don't understand Thai well enough to like watch the news. So I wasn't constantly bombarded with be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid.
Right.
We did have, like, I want to say March or April, we did have like a 6-week lockdown.
Okay.
And the AG told us, like, try to only go out to get groceries, just trying to figure out what this thing is.
Yeah.
But when
Right.
I would go out, everything was fine, normal, just everybody going about their life. Like,
Really?
the grocery stores weren't crazy. We didn't run out of anything. It
Wait, so
wasn't,
the 6
yeah, I was
weeks,
like,
the 6 weeks that you were supposedly on lockdown, everybody was just still out and about moving around?
or they didn't want more than 10 people meeting, like these kind of
Okay. Sure.
things like that, but nobody else was really following those guidelines, because I was hearing about, like, there's no toilet paper in America.
Yeah.
Like what
some
is
guy
my
just
toilet paper?
some guy just
You
bought
know?
all of it and stocked it up in his house.
Yeah, it was just so bizarre. And then we had probably another year before it really hit where I was.
Okay.
But even then, it never got as crazy as
Okay.
it did here.
So what
And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it again in
sounds like
Thailand.
it would have been better there. What was that like? So did it affect your ministry at all, or did you have to make any
Yeah.
adjustments, or maybe even in a positive way? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as a single person living by myself, it did get, there were a lot of hard days,
Yeah.
Fortunately, they went by actually quickly, which I'm thankful for. I would play like Nintendo Switch with my nieces and nephews, or, like watch Netflix series or whatever, to pass the time. But
Sure.
there were some days where I'm like, God, if I'm going to be like at home by myself in Thailand, I'd rather be at home with my family,
Yeah.
because I was missing adoptions and funerals and birthdays, like there was a lot that I wasn't a part of, just everyday memories, and I was like, why am I still here,
Mm.
And our ministry at the community center, we had 25 to 30 kids and it went down to 4. And I was
Wow.
like, dude, what is happening? Because fear dictates the people of Thailand.
Mm.
Very, very much, even outside of the pandemic, fear drives
Right.
them.
Right.
But once I took a step back and like, God, I'm not accidentally here at this time.
Mm.
Like, he knew well ahead of time that was going to happen while I was there, so I'm like, okay, so what is it you're wanting me to do here? And he showed me that we can be more intentional with those 4. They're 14-year-old teenagers, 3 or 4 teenagers there, and we could just be intentional with them and discipling them. And so we got them, and we found out randomly enough that people were scared to send their kids to us, but they were totally cool if we went to like their house.
Oh.
So we picked 3 different areas of the village and started doing community outreach. And then these teenagers, they were taking turns doing the Bible story, leading worship, playing games.
Yeah.
And all of this is their peers, like kids that they go to school with. And so I was like, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have done that, or I couldn't have done that if I didn't just take a step back and like, God, you knew I was going to be here. Like, what is your plan?
Right.
And to just trust that, and kind of stop feeling sorry for myself.
Mm.
So the Lord just really made the most of that time.
That's awesome. I love that.
Mhm.
So describe
Yeah.
a little bit more about the ministry work that you do there. It's a community center. And is it, are you there doing like ESL, or is it an actual place where they come like English as a second language, or is it a place where they actually come to be discipled, that these are, it's children, right? Or children or youth that have come to know the Lord? What
Mhm.
is the center there? What do they do?
It's an after school community center,
Okay.
and we are open to kids from 5 to 18. So whoever wants to come can come. For most of these kids, English is their third language because they have their
Wow.
tribal language and then they learn Thai at school and then we teach them English.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, and then we have Bible study one day, and then we have on Saturdays like a kids program, where
Okay.
they because there's some kids that go to a different school during the week, so they can't come during the week, but they can make it
Okay.
on Saturdays.
Got
So
it.
it's more like more kids can come on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's like a 2-hour program with Bible stories, games, and things like that. Yeah, so it's just a way to build relationship with the kids
Yeah.
and to be more like a consistent presence in that community.
Yeah. So you're back here itinerating, which is, for non what missionary people or people who have not been in church, that means literally raising support again to go back, right? And to get
Mhm.
back
Yes.
to your home, so to speak. Um, and I'd
Yes.
love to get the contact information and put it. I'll put it here in the link, so that people can reach out if they feel led to support you, to support your ministry and what you're doing. Um, are you now at a place where you're here in the States for 2 years itinerating, raising money, and then going back for what, 4 years, or what is the process?
Yeah, I got back in August and I'm aiming to get back in July.
Oh,
So I'm hoping it's less than a year.
okay. Is that
Yeah, but it just kind of depends when all the funds come
is
in.
that normal? I think in my mind it was always like 4 and 2, but is it really just depend upon when you have the funds and you can go?
Yeah, they since I've been doing it, they try to encourage you to try to do it within a year.
Oh, that's great. So you could potentially be back there in
Yeah, and
July.
then I'll go back for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
see as for you, either personally or in the ministry? I know you mentioned the Buddhist kind of stronghold that's there. What are some other challenges that that you face while you're over there? What are some things that people can be, when they think of you, can be praying about for you as you're dealing with this stuff head on over there?
Um. Well, definitely like spiritual protection, over my
Mm,
mind, my heart. You know, I don't want to give Satan any more power than he deserves, but he doesn't like that we're there. You
no,
know,
right.
I call Thailand Satan's playground. He has full reign.
Wow.
So definitely prayer for just protection, but also relationships. It's
Mm,
really hard. 'Cause my Thai is not what it should be. I speak maybe like a 2-year-old.
mm,
So it's hard to build relationships with Thai people, with the people of Thailand, but
right.
also to have just another like a Westerner friend,
Yeah.
because the people
Yeah.
of Thailand aren't going to understand what it's like for me to be living in another culture,
Right.
you know. So yeah, just to find people to connect with.
Yeah. For
Um,
relationships there.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
just be open to how God wants to work. Like I have ideas and dreams and stuff, but I don't want to do anything just because that's what I want to do.
Right.
It's however the Lord wants to work that out.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to share all of that. Your passion for the ministry that you're doing is so just evident, and I love, that's not the only thing you can do, by the way, obeying Christ, but I love that in that simplicity, that there is that which is what Christ calls us to, that childlike trust and the faith, like a child. And that he has protected you, kept you, provided for you miraculously, because you've just consistently said yes, and you just keep saying yes. And it's really such a really cool spirit. And there is such a great need there. And I know other people who've been to Thailand as well, and I know their heart is for that. But God has uniquely placed you with your talents and gifts to be there and ministering to those people. And so I love that. I love that you shared that with me and all of those listening. I appreciate you.
I'm thankful that you invited me on here. I'm always up for talking about Thailand, and what God's doing over there, and invite people to be a part of it, whether it's through prayer or coming out and joining me, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Sara, thank you once again for being on, and we'll have the contact information for anybody who wants to connect with you, contact you, support you, pray for you. We'll have that available to them. Well, this has been the Nefesh podcast, and I am so glad that you have been a part of this, joined, hopefully felt a stirring in your own heart for what God is doing in your life and how God is using you, and a reminder that God is continually changing, transforming, at work in our hearts and our lives as we continue to trust him. And it doesn't matter how old, how young we are, as we trust, he continues to do amazing things. And thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.